You are tuned into the Dr. Tyna Show with Dr. Tyna Moore. For more, visit drtyna.com. On this episode of the Dr. Tyna Show, I'm doing my first interview of the year with Aaron Alexander. I got to be on Aaron's podcast recently, and we had such a great time. He really asked me such incredible questions, and I thought this guy would be very fun to interview. Aaron is a movement specialist. He is the founder of the Align Method. He is the podcast host of the Align podcast. He's a manual therapist, and this man has such an interesting take on things. We got to dive deep into breathwork and the mechanics of breathing and how breathing can bring you all kinds of freedom that you didn't realize in your health, in your movement, in your mood, in your affect, in the ability to remain calm, and really how to harness that Jedi power that I feel like I'm always trying to achieve. As I age, every year I try to get better and better at achieving this Jedi level of calm. And what Aaron taught me was that really comes through breath. So you guys are going to learn a ton. We went a bit off topic here and there and just dove into all kinds of interesting topics, but we kept bringing it back to the breath. So with that, let's jump in. I'm really happy to talk to you today, actually, because it's going to make me cry. I was just persecuted and hammered over the past several years for pushing back on COVID. And I shared that with you a little bit when I met you and when I was on your podcast, which was so much fun. And the other day when I saw Trump sign that executive order to, like, who cares what you think of Trump? He signed an executive order to make censorship illegal. And I started bawling because I have held my tongue and locked my throat chakra up so intensely over the past several years. And I was trying to explain it to my husband last night. I come from a background of pretty heavy abuse by a family member my whole life. And I've shared that with my audience before. And it brought all that up of like, God, you don't know until it stops. And then I saw Katie Hopkins. She's a British comedian. I don't know if you know who she is, but she was really taken down and pushed. They did some terrible things to her in the UK and with censorship and stuff. And I think she'd even had legal battles. And she was crying the other night. And she said, you don't know how much freedom you lost until you get it back. And it really hit me like I'm having this definite PTSD feeling of like, God, we were really silenced so unjustly. And what a complete fuckery the past 5 years have been. And, really hit me like when you're in it, it's happening, but you're just trying to get through it, right? You're like weaving and dodging and trying not to get hit. But when it is seemingly over, which I don't know if it is, like, I'm still like, do I put my foot out? Am I going to get like, it's like a dog that's been beaten so much that it just wants to bite and grab every time you get near it. And I am trying so hard to let that go because it's in there and there's resentment. There's so much anger and resentment, and it's going to poison me if I don't let it go. So I've come to a place where I realized years ago, actually, I came to a place where I just decided to stop being angry at these people. But it definitely, these last few days have sort of invoked that memory. And man, it's a hard thing to shake and I don't even know what the feeling is. I have to sit with it and meditate on it because I can't even put my finger on how to describe it well. But there's something there for all of us who were, especially those of us who are living in this crazy places like the Pacific Northwest and just the whole West Coast, really. It was like a different world over here. And I don't know how to process it. And I think there's a heavy grief with it too. It's just like, we just got fucking hammered and it really happened. And now people are, there's the real consequences of what happened, the intervention and the lockdowns, all of it, like lives were lost, people are maimed. And I think that's what we're seeing, this split in the Maha movement right now, because there's those of us who are like, we need to see some serious action taken against certain things that we shall not speak of. And they're over here talking about like red dye number 5, right? So, which is fine. Like that's all well and good too, but that's where I'm at. And I was like, well, I'm going to talk to Aaron Alexander, who you helped me with you gave me such great perspective when I met you, kind of on this topic. And I was like, cool. We'll talk about breathing and releasing.
Yeah. Where do you feel that in your body? If you were to isolate it into the physical?
It's in my solar plexus. Like it's right here, and it's heavy. It's like crushing and heavy when it hits me, and then I feel my cortisol go up, and I'm like, fuck these people for. I'm not gonna outsource my anxiety and like let the actions and words of others raise my cortisol anymore, because that just makes you ugly and dissolves your collagen. So,
What do you feel like that does for you? What do you feel like? Is there something that feeling, or the feeling of like anger, or the feeling of resentment, or any of that? Do you feel like it serves you in some way?
no, I've gotten past that. I don't want it. It doesn't serve me. It's not helpful. It used to fuel me and help me stay in the game, but no, it feels like somebody is grabbing my heart and my chest and squeezing really hard when that feeling comes up for me, and I do not want it.
Huh. How old is that feeling? Is it something that's, and I promise I'm not trying to therapize you, and I wouldn't,
Yeah, I know.
it would be out of my scope to therapize anyway, but I just think it's interesting line of questions. Like, is that a familiar feeling? From what you said, it seems like it is, but how familiar is that feeling?
It's a newer, definitely a newer version of a really old feeling that I've had since, childhood when I was being abused. But it is definitely a newer version, because this one was a psyop. Like, this was a real mental fuck. Like, they really fucked with us mentally. And that part was very hard to endure.
Do you ever sit with, because you're able to localize where you feel it in yourself, if you sit quietly with it and feel into that part, have you ever done that?
I have.
What comes up?
I can usually visualize overriding it with light. I can usually bring in, it always is a different color, but I'll drop from my head into.
What if you don't override it?
Well, it feels black and mucky. It's like the light isn't there.
Yeah.
And I know the light's there. And so I just pulse it until it gets big enough to sort of dissolve. And I do it in the sauna too. It's best in the sauna, because you get hot, and then you get that moment where it's really uncomfortable because you're really hot and you want to flee, but you don't. And then you kind of like give into it, and then I can alchemize it into sweat, get it out of me.
What do you feel? Is it okay that I'm asking these questions?
Yeah, this is good.
What do you, so if you volunteered to explore not attempting to override, but actually just became really curious with the black and the muck, what do you feel, what feelings or sensations or anything would arise if you stepped into the muck?
I don't know. I've tried that actually in the past, and it feels like the darkness. Have you ever seen The Never Ending Story?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, that won't make as much sense.
I'm
you would like that movie. Actually, you should go watch that movie when we get off here. You would like it. You'll get it. You'll get what I'm trying to lay down here. It's the nothing. The nothing is trying to take over this planet and turn the planet into nothing. And it's winning because people have fear and they've lost hope. And in that process, the nothing is winning. And so when I feel that, it feels like the nothing. And I don't want to let it win. So I pulse it out with light.
I wonder, as you're saying that, if it feels like there's almost like this like dual kind of good bad, like I need to save the world, I need to step up, I need to do a thing, and then there's like the bad side. I wonder, do you feel like that could happen just internally, like you could come into communion and relationship with that and it not be like a doing, but something of just a like, could you introduce the dark and the light within yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'll consider it. Just sit with it. Just chill with it.
Yeah, like sometimes I wonder if maybe like this, like the outward, manifestation of things, like ultimately you could argue like, what is life, and is it a dream, or is it is there an objective reality? Is this a simulation? Is this God? Is this evolution? Like who the heck actually knows what's going on here? But the way that we're interpreting the world certainly is like an inside out job. like all the things that we see and the way that we see, like, life isn't happening. It's what we're focusing on within life is happening. There's so many lives that are happening. There's so many channels that are happening all of the time. You specifically, this thing called drtyna is focusing on a specific channel. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just the channel that you focus on. And that channel could either create torment, or it could create resentment. It could create anger. It could create happiness. It could create orgasms. It can create joy. It can create abundance. It can create, anything. And it's like we always have control over, and I can work on this stuff myself, but we always have control over the spotlight of what channel we're focusing on.
Yeah.
And when we get so impassioned about certain things, of like, but the justice and it's like, as long as that serves you and you're not being used by the channel, but you're able to choose to engage in the channel, then it's like, cool, good time, play with the justice, like, enjoy it, like, this is great, I love that. But is it something that creates contraction within the self? Is it something that creates darkness within the self? Is it something that closes down access to deeper relationships with others or with the self? Because that comes back to, like, the Stephen Porges polyvagal stuff. There's a binary, and you already know all this stuff, but there's a binary nature to the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And there's safety and there's threat. And when the body is safe, suddenly all of the healing mechanisms can come online, and everything just starts to like perfuse and circulate. The factories come on, like the lights come online. And when we're under threat, then suddenly it's like, oh my God, we don't have time for digestion or menstruation or muscular repair or any of this other stuff, immune function. Like, we need to shunt the blood the heck out of the organs, get it into the muscles. We got to get the heck out of the room, or we need to defend ourselves, or if it gets really bad, we're going to need to just collapse, play possum, shut down, and freeze. And all of those physical manifestations that come out into blood moving around our body and different organs being circulated or not circulated, or structures forming or not forming, all that does come back to the stories that we weave about ourselves and about the world to some degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get what you're laying down. It's interesting. One of my classic moves is just to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Ignore it until the feeling goes away. And then I, move on. But I don't think you can do that forever. I think it catches up to you.
No, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying get super, super interested in it.
Yeah.
And go all the way through it and alchemize the poison into the medicine.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, this is the dark muck, I need to get I gotta get some light in here now. What if we just really got to know the dark muck? And something that I enjoy doing, sometimes I work with a therapist. He helps me with certain things. Sometimes I can be a little like soft on myself, a little light on myself. I'm like a little too mother nurturing with myself. And I'll say things that aren't quite definitive enough, or I'll say things where I'm kind of like, I'll say something like, I feel like I'm sabotaging myself in this way, or I feel like I'm only working up to, a tenth of my potential, or something of that sort. Like, I have that sensation. And then I'll follow that with, but I'm doing pretty good, or in comparison to whatever, like my problems or whatever. And he's like, no, like, stop that. In order to create enough alchemical energy to get to create this change and shift within yourself, like, you actually need to build that energy up enough. And every time we kind of send a little injection of like, it's not so bad, or some kind of way that we kind of squirm out of it, it's like we're losing pressure to create the change. And I wonder, with something like that, if it's something that we've been experiencing within ourselves for, a short time or a long time, if there could be value in just going into it to really feel all the feelings and not bypass it with the light, and not bypass it with any of that stuff, but actually just go all the way into it until we make it out to the other side of it. And I'm not suggesting this for you, and it's just more just something I'm talking about from like just an explorational way.
No, I like it. I like it. It's kind of like if you're afraid of the dark, go sit in the dark.
Exactly. The solution to the fear of the dark is to be in the dark. It's literally the only solution. The solution to not be afraid of the monster underneath your bed is the only option is to go into the bed.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I am afraid of the dark, and I don't know why. And I live out in the country, and 2 nights ago, it's frozen here. It's just absolutely, it's sunny and beautiful, which is not like Oregon. Oregon's usually temperate and rainy. It's like usually like 45 degrees right about now. And right now it's like low 30s. And my dog decided at 10 o'clock at night, she was going to go wander the farm, and we live on 40 acres, and she went across the field. And I'm out there in the pitch black dark walking in my pajamas and a coat and a hat. And I'm calling for her. And I heard my voice get more and more frantic because I was getting scared because it was so dark and I was so far away from the house and I was so far away from any light. And I was starting to, and then I heard the coyotes chattering off in the distance. And I was like, then I started frantically yelling her name. And she plays this game of hide and seek. And by the time I got to my mother-in-law's house, there was light over there. She bolts out from behind something that she likes to play hide and go seek. So she'll like bolt out and then she starts running around, skittering around like, you found me, you found me. And then she was all excited and I started cracking up and we ran back to the house together and we were having so much fun and I was trying not to fall in a hole. But I did recognize my voice. I could feel my fear building from the darkness and I was getting really high pitched as I was calling her. And she's over there just waiting to, she's just hiding. She knows I'm there and she's there. She's just like, I'm going to wait till she gets close enough. Then I'm going to bolt out. And it was, I share this because I had this whole revelation right in that moment of like, she turned, I was at like fever pitch fear mode of the dark. And she all of a sudden turned it into this funny game. And I just fell apart laughing because I was like, oh my gosh, I was so silly. What's going to get me out here?
So there's something as I'm like, talking about all the things like, go look under the bed, expose yourself to the dark, exposure therapy, go into the muck and dark, all that stuff. I think that's still a little bit of the mind approach. There's also objective tools, a person that you already mentioned, like regulating your breath, your breathing. Mm-hmm. And so that's if a person is in a super reactionary state, they'll start to lose control of their capacity to really think in like a quote unquote rational way. And they'll literally become like a reptilian or more like mammalian version of themselves. The blood will go back into the hindbrain, will come out of the prefrontal cortex. And you're just acting on reflexes at that point. And a way that a person that you probably accidentally did with your dog because you started laughing, which would be putting you more into like an exhalatory pattern of breathing, which is great. But you can come into and just start to notice your breath. Something that people are commonly told, is like, take a deep breath. If you're feeling stressed out, taking a deep breath is maybe better than not breathing at all, but better suggestion would be take a long exhalation.
Yeah.
So it's that, like you can even do it in a conversation. Like literally me just doing that right now, I feel more calm just from that. And then, physiologically, I am more calm. You could measure it. Blood pressure will change, HRV will change. And what's happening in that is you're slowing down your heart rate. And so when you're in that place with the dog and you're getting panicked, you're getting really kind of stressed out, and you're going more into that sympathetic response. You're probably going more into an inhalatory pattern with your breathing. And once you felt calm, you probably had a little bit of an extended exhale.
Oh, I had a huge one.
And there might have even been a sigh.
Yeah.
And so all of that's something that's like, oh, interesting. That's a top-down approach where the environment caused you to come into having those physiological responses, but you can also go bottom up and start to regulate your autonomic nervous system through one of probably the most powerful tool will be the way that you breathe, because it's the bridge between the autonomic and the somatic nervous system. And it's also interesting that literally and figuratively, like every yoga book or spiritual book or whatever, is like the breath is the bridge between the mind, breath is king of the nervous system, all that. It's Iyengar. But it literally is the base of the brainstem, the medulla oblongata. That's why alligators are ornery. You know that reference?
No.
Oh man, what is that? Is it Billy Madison? Was that one where he's playing I was playing football? Do you know that one?
I know what you're talking about.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I
Is
vaguely, yes.
Billy Madison's the golf one. It's not Billy Madison. It's Happy
Happy Gilmore?
Gilmore. No,
Yeah.
Happy Gilmore's the golf one. Anyways, whatever.
I vaguely
Water Boy.
Adam
It's
Sandler.
It's Water Boy.
It's
You
Adam
don't know
Sandler.
that? You don't know that scene? He's talking about the medulla oblongata.
No, I vaguely remember. Yes, I can't like those. All of that like is in a void of the 2000s in my brain.
The professor's talking about the medulla oblongata, and then Adam Sandler, the water boy, raises his hand and he like tells him what the medulla oblongata does, and he says, "Mama says it's what causes alligators to get ornery." And then the whole class laughs at him, and he has a trauma moment. Then he has to work that out with a therapist and some breath work 20 years later. That's like the second. It's the second part. It's the second part of the movie.
Back to the breath again.
Full circle. So you can regulate your experience and use that. It's one of the best tools you can have if you are doing any type of like somatic experiencing or something where you are, if you're in a space to start unraveling some of those deep parts, which a podcast wouldn't be the place for it. Could be, but using the breath as a tool or a guide or a vehicle to take you into those places is one of the best things a person can possibly do. And that's, if you can learn the breath, the art and science of the breath, which is a thing that I've been the most enamored with for the last while. It really acts as a vehicle to be able to do almost anything you want to do with your physiology and your nervous system, which is cool.
It's that long exhale that has such benefit. And I don't know all the science around it. And I know that incorporating tone with it is really, really helpful. And then also shaking. So I'll like shake and then do this big, like big exhale. And it is so relieving of stress and anxiety for me. And I've taught that to my patients as well. I actually would have them do an exhale, a long exhale, because I did a lot of injection therapies, and that's predominantly what I did in practice. And it can be painful, right? And we're going into areas that have a lot of memories in them because the tissues keep the score, really, right? And we would hit into areas that were 3-4 inches deep, and they would like come undone. And we would use this long exhale because when you're in pain, you're just inhaling and holding and sucking air in. And so we would use that too. But can you explain some of the science behind that and mechanism?
So when you're exhaling, what does your diaphragm do? When you're breathing, the diaphragm comes down to pull the lungs. Something that's interesting about the lungs, I had this just kind of thought the other week where I was like, wow, it actually created some pause within me. The lungs, I think we think of the lungs as being like active structures, as though like, your lungs are breathing. It's like your lungs are just these bags filled with, billions of alveoli. If you were to spread out all the alveoli, from what I have read and heard, it would cover the distance of a tennis court. So if you were to like open all of that precious tissue up, it would actually unravel into a tennis court, which is pretty amazing. But what's causing the lungs to be filled with air is all through the contraction of the muscles surrounding. So the diaphragm being like this big, beautiful plunging type device that's slightly asymmetrical because the liver is a little bit bigger on one side. And it pulls that system down. And then you have the intercostals. And then if you're breathing more in a stressed way, you're going to go up into the neck muscles. And all that's happening in that is it's creating a vacuum through these muscular contractions, and you're being filled with air. Like the muscles contract, it creates this inverse pressure system, and you just get filled with air. Like air is just filling you. It's kind of an interesting thing. When I was like, oh, interesting. I'm just like, it's almost like air is happening. But so as you are exhaling, the diaphragm is ascending. So it's coming up. It's closing up the space around the chest cavity. And so that's causing the blood vessels to contract and constrict and get smaller. And then you get a signal through some neurons in the heart. It's like a pacemaker in the heart saying, oh, we need to slow things down a little bit because things are getting really tight. So we're going to slow things down. And then when you are going into an inhale, then suddenly the diaphragm is descending, it's coming down. So now all of a sudden the heart, the chambers of the heart and that whole chest cavity expands outward. It's called sinus. What is it called? Nasal sinus arrhythmia. I'm spacing the name on it right now. But so that process going through that. Oh, respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Sorry. So respiratory sinus arrhythmia is the process of when you inhale, things speed up. When you exhale, things slow down. And then when you hold your breath, that's another, well, we'll come back. Holding your breath is interesting as well. When you're humming or making some type of sound, that's nice for a lot of reasons. One, you're starting to activate some of the muscles around the throat. So you're engaging some of the nerves around. So you have these 12 cranial nerves. There's cranial nerves that are innervating the muscles around the throat. If you're in a place of, say, like a shutdown or freeze response, the nerves innervating those muscles that would allow you to do something like humming or sighing, any of that, they can start to lose tone. And you'll go into kind of this like flaccid freeze response, shutdown response. And so you can start to retune the nerve fibers that would be activating the muscles that allow for speech and communication. And what that does to your nervous system is it sends a signal that you're safe to communicate. And so when you speak slow and deep and you have pauses and you exhale, all of those would be trademark signs that you're calm, you feel safe, you feel like things are under control. The moment that you feel like you are out of control, you feel like you're under threat, you feel like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Suddenly everything goes, it clamps up and your vocal cords and everything gets tight and you end up speaking. You'll probably talk faster, but you also talk in a higher pitched tone. And so you can start to retune or recalibrate those muscles and the nerve fibers that would be responsible for creating tone or voice. And so just like going through that, you're slowing the heart rate down, which is great. You're also giving yourself almost like a little nerve massage or nervous system massage. And so if you were a little bit out of whack before, it's almost like bringing you back into equilibrium just through creating that acoustic vibration of the sigh. It also builds up humming in particular. Ends up you release a significant, I think it's like 13 times, if I remember correctly, 13 times more nitric oxide production through the process of humming. So that's a vasodilator, causes things to open. So it's like just, it literally and figuratively, physiologically, all the ways is opening you up. It's opening you up to the world. And when you inhale, something that's interesting as well, you actually you have a higher perception of threat. So there has been research done. You might have heard about this before, where people were shown various different pictures of like neutral faces to kind of a little bit less neutral. And what they found is people will perceive, if they're in an inhalatory pattern, they'll perceive the faces as more threatening. If you're in an exhalatory pattern, you'll perceive the face as like, okay, cool, things are chill, it's all good. And so we're always oscillating in and out of sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. It's like everything goes in a tide. Your heartbeat goes in a tide. The sun, the moon, it's all tidal. It's all rhythmic. And so sympathetic, not bad or good. Parasympathetic, not bad or good. Them working together in union, super good. And so it's that oscillation between the two that's really valuable. So for you to be able to have a healthy sympathetic response where everything tightens up, you shunt blood out of the viscera into the appendicular, like into the limbs to be able to get the heck out of the room. Your pupils dilate, you become myopic. It's like you're flexing and stretching your nervous system into the sympathetic. It's so beautiful. And then you hide underneath a tree, you shake it out, whatever you do, like a zebra would do, which is why they don't get ulcers, which is Robert Sapolsky book. Then you are retuning and recalibrating your system back into the parasympathetic, where now, okay, it's safe. We can now go back into healing. We can now go back into restoration, because probably when we were in that sympathetic tone, we probably jacked ourselves up a little bit to survive that threat. Now we need to restore. Now we need to heal. The problem with the world that we live in, this is a Stephen Porges reference. Well, something we talked about in the conversation was that the world that we live in is, he says, inherently abusive. And it depends on how you cut it. There'll be a lot of nuance to it. But you think like the lights that it seems like you have artificial lights on you right now.
Yes,
right?
I have the window open.
So it's just the window.
I do.
Oh, the lighting's so good.
I have a little bit of artificial lights, but I'm sitting near a window and it's sunny, so I opened it.
Good.
My podcast producer will complain because I'm bleaching myself out, but I'm not gonna waste the sun. So
don't waste the sun. Yeah. So I'm in my whatever you'd call this, office, podcast space, whatever. It's surrounded by windows, which is great. But I also have the artificial lights going as well. And so within that is. It's actually I mean, you already know all that stuff, but it's sending kind of a little bit of like an irritating stimulus to my nervous system. It's causing me to close up a little bit, right? And if you look at, you think of like the Wi-Fi and the radiation, all that stuff, they have a very consistent pattern with the way that those frequencies are being released, and alternating current, electricity passing through your house as opposed to the direct current that you'd be getting from the sun. It kind of just, it's almost like we're under like a subtle, low scale attack, and that's also, you could change your perception of that and probably augment things as well. But just the homes that we're living in, or if you look at like a person, like the jobs that we have for the most part, or if you're in college, when he was talking about this, he was talking about in college, a person just sitting inside of an artificially lit room, sitting at a desk where they're hunching over, their hips are at 90 degrees, their knees are at 90 degrees, their shoulders are hunched forward, their eyes are chronically contracted because they're looking at something up close, which contracts the muscles around the eyes. You're kind of holding yourself in this pattern that's not really advantageous for the body to be able to heal or express or feel like it can actually like access its full range of motions, which is the way that we circulate fluids and heal ourselves. And so the mold that if we just allow ourselves to be dust in the wind in modern culture, we're fighting an uphill battle towards health. And so, within that, it's like we need to kind of we need to go out of our way to bring back the parasympathetic, or else we'll probably get stuck in the chronic sympathetic. And then any form of, even the concept of like battling a disease, I think, that's, even that idea might put us more into sympathetic as well. But so it's we, in the world that we live in, we need to go out of our way to access the parasympathetic. One of the easiest ways that we can do that, regardless of what you're doing or where you're at, is to access the breath. It's like a superpower. So no matter what the situation is, no matter what the lights are, no matter what radiation you have going on, or what, if you're in the 2000th floor of a building, you can always access the breath, and it can always bring you back, at least within yourself, back to a place of a little bit more parasympathetic ease.
Which is so critical and such an easy thing to, if you don't even know about this. I learned about this decades ago from my mentor when I was his receptionist, and I was answering the phone and he could tell I was stressed out, and he told me to not, he's like, put the phone down, don't answer it. And he took me through some breathing exercises. I think I was like 24. And he was a naturopathic doctor. He was a Jedi. The guy was a genius. And he took me through this breathing exercise, and he basically had me do box breathing, but the hold and the exhale were longer than the inhale, right? So that's something I still do to this day. And I do it when I go walking. And this is another thing that I hum quite a bit. This is something else I brought to my patients when I was treating them. So I would have them breathe in, hold their breath, and then I'd have them do just an aggressive breath out, and you welcome them to, or invite them to have a noise with it if they wanted to. So a sigh. And that's when I would stick them, is right on the exhale, and they would not feel it. Like it was a whole different game than if they were getting, the needle stick on the inhale. And then the second thing I would do is have them hum their favorite song. And if they couldn't think of anything, I would just say, hum Mary Had a Little Lamb. So they would hum Mary Had a Little Lamb throughout the entire procedure, which I'm pretty fast, so I could get through it very quickly. But it was just remarkably different than the people who refused to hum or thought it was silly. I'm like, we're all friends here. We don't care. Just hum. And then my assistant would start humming, and they would start humming with them. But the folks who didn't want to give into that, who just wanted to hold that breath or sip the air in and keep sipping, a whole different experience for them. So just even on the pain, like acute pain, it has such a profound impact.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up as we're talking about, that comes to mind, is a lot of people, especially if you're stressed, and you've already heard this as well, they will over breathe, breathe too much. And so you've probably heard the perfect breath or coherence breathing. It's like in and around between like 5 and 6 seconds on the inhalation and 5 and 6 seconds on the exhalation. And if you were to sing most or many of the mantras that you might do if you're in like the kirtan or something of the sort, or a lot of spiritual stuff where a part of the practice would be singing or speaking some type of mantra or something of the sort, what you'll find very consistently is it will actually bring people naturally into that coherence breathing pattern. And so then they end up accessing these, whatever, higher realms or greater peace within self or whatever the thing is. And they're bringing themselves back into what would be a really like ideal breathing pattern. If a person goes into quote unquote over breathing, breathing too much, which is no over breathing, it's just it's a maladaptive pattern because you're feeling like you're kind of like panicked.
Yeah.
And so if you're panicking, you start making everything worse. Like a panicked person in an emergency situation is the worst thing you can possibly have in an emergency situation. They'll start knocking things over. Like, have you ever done scuba diving? One of the things that I've never witnessed this. I've almost actually had a panic attack while scuba diving. It was like 110 feet or something like that. I'd never done that before.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I went through a moment where I was like, everything started collapsing on me and getting dark. No. And one of the things that can happen with that is people will completely lose control and freak out, and they'll take their mask off in like this panic. And thankfully I didn't do that. I just breathed. And I like literally in that instance, I literally came back to my breath. I came back to my exhale. I did the things that I know how to do, and I was able to sort it out, which is great. But the reason I'm saying is that if you're over breathing, you are placing yourself physiologically from a bottom up perspective into a more panicked state. It's going to reduce your clarity of thought. It's going to reduce your ability to problem solve. It's going to put you into a more reactive state. It'll probably make you more quick to anger, more quick to resentment, more quick to all of the things that don't really feel good in the body. And you're also perpetuating and practicing that pattern because you're structurally changing the shape of the hemoglobin cells within the red blood cells that are responsible for releasing oxygen.
Wow.
So there's a fancy thing called the Bohr effect. And when you are exhaling, well, it's not so much just exhaling. When you're building up CO2, which would come when you're exhaling or come when you are, holding your breath rather is when you be building the CO2 up, that will change the acidity of the blood. And that will cause the reaction of increased CO2 and increased acidity causes the hemoglobin cells to change their shape to be able to more efficiently liberate oxygen. And when you do the opposite and you fill yourself up, or you are over breathing, you're shunting or getting rid of, you're off gassing more CO2, then you are increasing alkalinity in the blood. You're increasing or you're reducing CO2, and that causes the shape to change, and your hemoglobin become more bound or stingy with releasing oxygen, which causes you to have this air hunger manifest because you are hypersensitized to CO2. So if you can develop your CO2 tolerance, they call it, by just exploring longer exhalations, exploring breath holds, exploring slowing down the way that you communicate, exploring taking pauses, exploring taking a walk and maybe, do an exhale, hold your breath and say, cool, I'm going to do another breath in through my nose when I reach that tree or that phone pole. Just play little games with yourself. You literally are in real time changing the structure and function of the cells that liberate oxygen to your muscles and to your brain. And that causes you to become literally a safer person. You're a safer person because if you're not in this ravenous space of, oh my God, I need air, I need air, I need air, I need air. You're in a place of like air, like no problem. We're good. We're so liberated. Like we have oxygen just perfuses our muscles so smoothly, baby. Like this is so chill. We're so good. And so, and what I would propose within that, I haven't seen like research or this or whatever, but a person that's kind of more like greedy or more kind of like pulling, kind of like grasping tightly on life, trying to control things. My guess, if there was some way to conduct some research around that, is they would probably have a breathing pattern where they have a tendency of overbreathing. And what would the manifestation metabolically and from like a chemical level in their blood would be, they probably feel like they're starving for air.
Mm-hmm.
And that translates into the sensation of like, oh, I gotta get mine. I gotta get mine. I gotta get mine. And if a person comes into a place where they're like, you know what, like, I love you, it's all good, I feel like we're good, it's fine, this is fine, probably that person has a tendency towards exhalation. Probably that person has a tendency away from air hunger, and they have decent CO2 tolerance, and they probably internally are functioning in a way where they feel safe.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that just focusing on the long exhale and like you said, the breath hold, I like the concept of that CO2 tolerance. Another way that I was taught to do that was through just breathing in a bag. I used to get asthmatic attacks when I was a kid, and I mean, it would spiral sometimes where I couldn't breathe and I would get really panicked. And it was so simple. Finally, one of my chiropractors, this is one of the reasons I became a chiropractor, because I had some really cool chiropractors. One of my chiropractors was like, well, just breathe into a brown paper bag when you feel like that. And I did, and it worked. And it was years. It was like a lifetime of these air hunger attacks. And all I needed to do was breathe into a brown paper bag, which helps you improve your CO2 tolerance, right? And
you're recirculating CO2.
There's a panic button in your brainstem. We're such incredibly, amazingly built creatures. And yet that's one of, I would say, if there's like any mechanisms in the human or in just the mammalian body that confuse me, that would be the one, which is when the CO2 gets too high, there is literally a panic button in your brainstem and you freak out. And that learning to not freak out.
There was
the breath is how you
there was you've probably heard of, if not read, the book Breathe by James Nestor. He references a I guess you call it study or just happening with a gal. I don't remember her name. She has, you might know the name of the condition, but a condition where she's not physically able to feel fear. So it's a very dangerous condition, whatever aspect of the brain, somewhere in the amygdala or some complex that is just downregulated in such a way that she just doesn't feel. There could be a mountain lion sitting on her lap and she just isn't able to feel the sensation of fear with that. And they've done everything to try to induce this. And like, what, like, I don't know, stimulate, because you need to feel fear naturally in order to be able to survive.
Right.
Same thing, like you need to be able to feel pain. Be an incredibly dangerous situation to not be able to feel sensation, feel pain. And what they found, I think maybe by accident, maybe not, but what they found was the only thing that would actually induce a sensation of fear was doing breathing CO2. So they have like concentrated CO2, and you breathe the CO2 in, and it just sends you into a panic response. And so through exposure therapy, you can start to modulate your response to CO2. So if you're a person that has a tendency of living a life in fear, which we all do to certain levels, one of the ways to reduce your perceived sensation of fear is to increase your tolerance to fear gas, being CO2.
That's interesting. And that is, well, yeah, because there is literally a panic button in your brain. It's so weird because there's usually we get feedback loops and our body self corrects, but not that one. That one is how you end up drowning or, freaking out.
But you can push it. That's why I think the world record breath hold time is it's like over 20 minutes, like 22 minutes or something. So you can certainly push it. So that person's overriding for 20 minutes. Yeah. And so what is their experience of the threat of, oh my God, I need to breathe or I'm going to die after 3 minutes? It's probably pretty chill because they've exposed themselves enough. And so what that will do is it'll spill into other aspects of life, and it'll make you be probably a more diplomatic person and a more compassionate person.
I love that. That's wonderful. So we all just need to learn to breathe better and hold our breaths. So we can calm the F down
and relax our eyes, because your eyes, they are neurological tissue. They're continuations of your brain. Huberman's a good person with this stuff. And so the way that they are regulating light and also the lenses of the eyes, whether they're taking in the panorama or focusing in myopically, that also is going to be regulating the autonomic nervous system to tell you either are under stress or you're in a relaxed, chill response. You're able to chill, you're able to be calm because you're just taking it all in. You're spacing out. You're not under threat. There's no tiger in the room, or else you'd be locked into the tiger. And so you can massage and regulate or modulate your autonomic nervous system just through modulating the way that you're using your eyes. You can modulate and regulate your autonomic nervous system just through modulating the way that you use your breath. And the rest of the senses. I mean, we could keep talking about the rest of the senses, but if you want to feel better and you want to feel more attuned, more aligned, more homeostatic, massage your way into your senses. Have sensual experiences. They're the windows into the autonomic nervous system.
I love that. These are really nice tools that people can utilize to just up-level their nervous system and calm it down, because some of us are just built, some of us come out the chute just cortisol addicts, and that's not entirely our fault. A lot of it has to do with the state of the nervous system of our mother when we were in utero, and we come out, I'm one of them, we come out just, like this, and learning to utilize breath and movement too. That's when I found you, was years ago, was through your work in movement. And I had no Instagram following. I was like so enamored with what you were doing. I think I bought one of your courses. You had did you have a course with bands? I feel like there was a course that you did. And I used it. I loved it. Anyway, I think movement allows you to bring your breath in and to become aware of your breath. That's one of the best tools I've had to get my breath under control, was especially when things start getting metabolic. Like if I'm doing a lot of snatches, like kettlebell snatches in a row, if you don't regulate your breath during that, you're done. You can't get through it. And so I think movement is a wonderful way for people. I think we talked about this on your podcast too, to ground into their body and be able to bring some of these tools with them.
Yeah, a movement. So that, especially if you're starting to synchronize movement to rhythm, or song, dance, there's research from the Albert Einstein Medical College or School of Medicine, where they were studying different ways to offset cognitive decline. And they found that of all the different things, they do it all the Poindexter smart stuff, crossword puzzles, different things with the brain. They found that partner dance to music, obviously, was the highest leverage thing a person could do to stave off cognitive decline, because you're incorporating emotionality into it, you're incorporating rhythm, you're having to synchronize the electrical storm that is your nervous system, conducting your appendages to a song with another person. And then you have, oh my God, I feel shy. I feel I feel a little stressed out. What are they going to think about me? You're you're coming alive in that instance, compared to being alone, doing a couple bicep curls. You got your earbuds on, you're radiating yourself.
Right.
Who knows how
radiating your brain with your Bluetooth.
Who knows how, I'm not I don't have a super big dog in the situation, in the race of radiation, good, bad, what, I don't know enough about it, but intuitively it seems sensible. We're bioelectric beings, probably try to keep it as analog as possible. And then if you are going to go digital, just kind of shake off, think of all the digital stuff and all the radiation stuff. I'm just making this up right now, so we'll see how this comes out, but I think it was like a dog shakes off water. When the dog gets wet, they shake it off. The water was fine. It's just if the dog keeps the water on them, that's when it's oh, this is a problem. The dog naturally will just shake it off. I think with all the radiation, sure, wear your earbuds. If it's better, you can do handstands and work out and do Zumba with your earbuds in, no problem. Just maybe take your shoes off and go walk outside afterwards. Touch a tree,
go
maybe
ground
walk
a little bit.
Walk by a river afterwards. You just and maybe literally shake. I think that's the more important thing. I think the problem with that intuitively, and I'm sure there's lots of research you probably know more about than I do, would be if that becomes the nature of your whole life as you are living up in a high rise and you're bombarded by all the frequencies. And I think it's just confusing for the nervous system, but I'm not the expert on that. So I'll stay away from that topic.
Well, people get themselves locked in cubicles, and that's to me, that's the vision. When I graduated from college, I took a job working for my mentor, and I was getting paid $11 an hour. And my parents were very dismayed. And they said, because I lived in the area where Intel was, and they were like, why don't you go get a job at Intel? They'll start you at $33,000 a year with benefits. And that's what all the young people were doing out of college at the time. And this was like the mid 90s. And I was like, hell no, I will never work in a cubicle. I will never sit under fluorescent lights all day, stuck in a box. And then I found myself years later living in a high-rise apartment in the city, knowing I was getting blasted with Wi-Fi all around me with like a big electrical, it wasn't the transformer or anything, but it was like a big electrical pole with like a lot of currency running or whatever running through it. And I realized I was living that, and I was like, this can't be good for me. So moving to the farm was very helpful because I literally go outside every single day. It's very sunny on the backside of our house when the wind isn't blasting us. I go outside, I shake, I do my long audible exhale while I shake it all off, because I sit here under these lights now. I'm like, nah, I won't work in a cubicle, but I'm under, like you are, like I'm under lights for podcasting. And I go outside, I shake it off. I make my audible sighs. My daughter thinks I'm so funny because I try to get her to do it. And she's like, why are you being so noisy? But just getting that like, like deep guttural, long sighs, shaking it all off. And then I'm good, get a little grounding in there, pet my dogs. Dogs are another thing, just to mention, if people haven't heard me say this, your dogs go out and they ground all day outside and they collect the negative electrons. And so when you pet them, that's one of the reasons we love petting dogs and cats. If your cat's an outside cat, is because they are literally bringing the grounding to you. They're like a grounding mat, if you will.
That's cool.
So
that's amazing.
Pet the dogs.
Something that, as you're saying, that comes up that's relevant, I think, as well, is the body can become toxic when your waste management systems are backed up. And your waste management systems it's called your lymphatic system. And the lymphatic glands, I feel like we might even talked about this. Maybe we didn't on my podcast, but with you, maybe not. But they are located in places of a high volume of movement. So the highest concentration lymphatic glands will be back behind the knees, the popliteal area, in the groin, in the abdomen, in the collarbone, the neck, armpits, all these places to just naturally, through evolution, if you believe in such a thing, we evolved in such a way so that when you walk, when you locomote, when you move forward in space, you end up naturally rinsing out all of those waste management centers. It's like you're turning the gear of the waste management centers, and you rinse yourself out just by taking a walk. And so you recirculate yourself by taking a walk, and you can become a toxic stew of yourself by closing off. You're crimping off all of those garbage receptacles in your knees, in your hips, in your shoulders, in your neck, when you are sitting and you are just hunching over a desk all day long. You start to get backed up on yourself. You start to it's like your toilet gets clogged. And so the easiest thing a person can do is just go take a walk. But if you have an issue with lymphatic stuff, then it could be supportive. And this is supportive in general. Something I'll do, I got this from my buddy Perry Nicholson. I think I've done like 3 episodes or something with him as well. Yeah, I think he's a sweetie. But he calls it the big 6 of lymphatic drainage. I posted a YouTube video where he just talks through that, but I can briefly share it now. But the YouTube video is like an 8-minute version of it where it breaks it down better. But starting off going through, I won't go through all the parts, but starting off working around places of low pressure, so up higher. So starting off working around the collarbone, then working around the armpits and working around the neck, and then going in and working around the abdomen, and then working around the groin, and then working in the back of the knee, and then get yourself a rebounder. I think is a great tool to have around. I've got one sitting out here in the yard. What that's going to do is that's going to start engaging the inferior pumps of your body. I'm just making that up, but your calves are pumps that circulate all of the stuff from low to high. So you got your inferior pumps, your southern pumps that pump the stuff from your lower body, your feet, and your lower compartments up to the heart and up to the rest of the lymphatic system to be able to be recirculated and reperfused to the rest of the body. If you don't pump those pump factories down there, then you become stagnant.
Yep.
And so one of the, like something, if you literally just, I have a gym membership across the street here, and there's an infrared sauna. It's mixed with infrared and traditional, which I think is the best. And I'll sit there, I'll cross my legs, raise my legs up off the ground. I'll go through the big six. And I'm a believer. Like the big six, it's like you go through that, rub both your collarbones, neck, armpits, abdomen, groin, back of the knees. Like you feel more light, you feel more clear, you feel more flexible. Like your body's like, oh, wow. It's like, oh, I was like a little toxic. Like,
yeah.
like 85 seconds ago. Now I'm a little less toxic. Yeah. Like, wow, you can just do that. I had no idea.
It's really, his work is so good. And he's got the lymphatic mojo course, and he's so good. And his big six are solid. I agree with you. And I think that's why I feel like I can process all the dark energy, the nothing that I call it, right? I can do that in the sauna.
The muck.
Yeah, the muck, because I can do it in the sauna. The sauna gives me that chance to like move it better. And it's probably in large part due to the fact that I'm moving my lymph around just by getting hot. It's
something that I've found nice, and I'm not a talk therapist, so I'm not a person to be like advising anybody, but I found I pay a talk therapist, and they focus more like somatically, which I think is nice. It's a lot of like investigating into the body, how the sensations arise in the body, what's allowing the facilitation or facilitating the space to allow the body to communicate, which sounds out there for some people. Unless you've had experiences like that, then it totally makes sense.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've done with therapists in the past that I've actually found to be very helpful, which feel free to disagree with this, is allowing a voice to those, like the dark, mucky stuff, and like saying the terrible thing. Saying the thing that like I don't allow myself to say. It's like, no, we don't. Oh, I don't want to manifest. It's like, no, say the worst thing. Like whatever the thing is, that's like you hold as like, oh, it's the I don't want to. Oh, it shall not be spoken.
The quiet secrets you hold inside.
Yeah, just say it. And just like, oh, it's not that bad. And coming to the other side of like, and what if that happens?
Yeah.
Like what actually happens? Like, oh, right. So like it's like Stoic philosophy and such. Like, okay, what if the worst thing happens? Like how will you be? It's like, well, the worst thing is, whatever the thing is, typically on the other side of that, you're like, oh yeah, right. Like I'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, worst case scenario, you maybe die. And then it's like, oh, like if you die, like will you be okay? It's like, oh yeah, I'll be okay. You're like, okay. So like, you're okay. It's like, yeah, I guess I'm okay. Okay. Cool.
I like this therapy strategy. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. And I think a lot of people, I've heard so many great quotes. I can't think of them precisely right now about what worry does to us, and how worrying just literally like you're poisoning yourself for no reason in real time.
Yeah.
And
you're praying for what you don't want to happen.
Yeah. And then also realizing a big thing for me is just over the years has been picking my battles, and then realizing things I don't have control over is not worth spending any energy or worrying on. If I don't have any control, some will say that's defeating and, oh, you should try harder. It's like, no, I know there's things out there I can't have any say in. So why am I letting it bother me? Mm-hmm. Like there's like, big players on the political platforms. Like there's only so much we can do. Like the fuckery that was the past 5 years and the shit that was happening, there was little that could be done from one individual. And so why was I letting myself get so physically consumed with the stress of it, right? And then when you're feeling something and especially that's the one problem I have with talk therapy is when you're talking about something or you're feeling it, that chemical reaction is happening in real time. So you're literally poisoning yourself with cortisol if you're one of those people who likes to get riled up. and allowing yourself to get riled up regularly. And people seem to like it. Like I see that on social media, right? Like people love the drama, and I so don't like drama, and I so don't like getting riled up, and I don't like people who rile me up, and I don't like situations that rile me up, and I avoid it like the plague because I spent my life as a lifetime of being riled up. And so just picking your battle and being like, oh, do I have any control over this? No. Is there anything I can do right now? No. Well, are these my monkeys? No, this is not my circus.
Yeah.
Next.
And then there'd be like another, well, as you're talking, the serenity prayer came to mind. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I'm reading it. Courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. I think if a person can nail that, serenity to accept the things you can't change. Cool. I can't change it. Great. The only thing I can do is come into grace and ease with it. And then the courage to be able to actually lean into the things that you can. That's it. Like you have so much saved bandwidth if you can just be in that place of like, what can I actually do? And imagine if you put 100% of your energy into what you actually can do and what you actually can make progress with. Every person, at least me, would probably be such a more efficient version of this. We'd be so much more successful, so much happier, have such better relationships if we could just let go of the ruminating and go into like, what can I actually do in this moment?
Yes. Action overrides anxiety. And
yes,
that's my favorite thing about having a podcast or having a social media platform is I can just go into service. Like I just go into service. How can I be of service right now? And for me, that's teaching. I love to teach. So that's how I get myself through those moments. It's like, I'm going to go teach something really helpful to people right now. And what can I create and put out in the world that would be beneficial and helpful and be of service? And when you do that, you can't lose, right? Like that's my mode. That's my de-stress mode. And
you're also, you're physiologically telling yourself that you're moving into progress, or you're moving into safety, or you're actually making change. So if the nervous system is stuck in, say, a freeze response, the way to unstick it from the freeze response, the biggest lever would be social engagement, a la polyvagal theory. But to be able to get yourself to social engagement, you're probably going to have to move your butt off of the couch and out of your phone or your computer or whatever, and move yourself into the world. And you're going to be scanning the horizon, which again, you're massaging your nervous system with your visual muscles. And so you're scanning the horizon as you're going, you're sending all these feedback loops that like, the Tyna is moving forward into progress. She's finding solutions. Yes. I don't know if it's the right solutions, but I know she's making more progress than she did before.
Yes. Yes.
So like,
yes, it fixes everything.
Like nervous system feels good about this.
Yes.
and it makes you feel better.
Yes. And if we can add some hormesis to it, hermetically, if we can put ourselves into a little bit of a challenge and survive it. So this is where sauna comes in, or where if you want to go have a heavy lifting session, do some deadlifts, or, things that give you a little bit of a challenge. So you get that dopamine hit in the process of trying to do something hard. So whatever it is, it might be a walk and then followed up. Maybe it's a dunk in some cold water, or even splashing cold water on your face, but just giving your body and your nervous system that chance to have a little hormetic challenge experience. And then you get a little dopamine hit because little win.
something you said as well that I think is, I don't know, I find interesting is like, I avoid these things because I know that they get me like riled up. I think that's super smart and super strategic. And then there's even like another level where it's like, these things don't rile me up. Yeah. There's no charge.
That's Jedi level. I'm not there
That's
yet.
What I was like, there's the Jedi level where it's like, expose away, baby. And so like that is the muck. That's the dark. That's like, instead of the okay, we got to get some light in this room. It's like, because I'm feeling a charge around that. I don't want to feel the dark.
Yeah. I'm much better at it now.
Yeah. Well, just using it as like a metaphor, it doesn't even need to be about like you per se, or just in general, like a person that has something where it's like, I avoid that because I know it's going to get me all crazy. It's like, probably do that for a while because you need to like bandage that space. You need a splint. And eventually, if you want to experience presumably, an even greater sensation of like ease and grace and fulfillment within the self, like deep in the nervous system, there's probably availability to maybe start to come into the root of like, why do those things create so much trigger and charge within me.
Mm-hmm.
And then a person starts to feel resourced enough within themselves where they actually could seek out the trigger, because it's like, oh, I like hormesis. Hormesis feels good. Suddenly, the hermetic response of a cold plunge or a sauna, it's hermetic, but it's not nearly as hermetic as the thing that triggers me. And so could I do like the weightlifting of exposing myself to the thing that really pisses me off? And am I able to expose myself to that and say like, okay, cool. Like hit me with your best shot.
That's
like I can be with this.
That's when I go listen to CNN. I give myself little, I try to listen to all sides of things always, you know, and it's a desensitization process of sitting with the extremely opposing views or the,
or can you find compassion, for the person
absolutely.
you hate?
Yeah, absolutely.
So find the person.
I don't hate anyone.
I know. But whatever. Hypothetically, find compassion. You find the person you find most distasteful. The person that triggers you the most is probably one of the people that can teach you the most on the planet.
It's absolutely true.
It's just the other pole. It's the pole that you don't want to look at. There's the other pole of like the rum dust and the other ones, and like the people that are like, oh, like they made me feel so good. Perfect. Love them. Keep that pole. Now there's also the lessons of the people that really freak you out.
Yep. This is where I think platforms like X are really helpful, because you can dig into all sides of situations and really learn a lot and realize like, wow, these people who feel completely polar opposite in their belief system of what I believe about this, whatever topic, their arguments actually really sound in some cases. And they're really coming from a place of high intelligence and compassion themselves. And they really believe this, instead of it being them, right? Like us versus them. It's like it's the good old days when you could sit down with people that had extremely opposing views, and you guys could like sit there at a party and have an interesting conversation, and then both leave having learned something new and having a new level of compassion for the other one. It's like we're missing that, I think, societally. So it's all part of this though. And this is where breath work and being able to harness your breath is helpful, because you can breathe through those tough moments, but people don't want to sit in the discomfort of things anymore. And I really try to just like hunker in there. Often I really want to like, oh, I don't want to read this or I don't want to hear this, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I need to keep myself abreast and educated. And also I want to be curious and have compassion for other humans, whether I agree with them or not, like we're all on this planet together. So, and they obviously care strongly about this. Like, how can I understand that better? I don't have to agree with it, but
yeah. And then also I feel like it's like I experienced this during it's interesting. Now I feel like you're able to say the C word, the COV, whatever word. I've been conditioned that it's like illegal to say that. It's like
word. Voldemort, he who shall not be named.
Yeah, exactly. But now with the adjustment and administration, I'm like, wait, are you allowed to? Are we
allowed to talk about this? I don't know.
I think you're allowed to say that now. Oh crap! I don't remember what I was going to say. Never mind. Oh well, whatever. I had a thing I was going to say, then I got wrapped up in oh wait, no, that was it. If you can place yourself into, no one is wrong.
Yeah.
Like every person from their experience is actually acting and expressing absolutely perfect with their genetics and their environmental conditions and their parents. Like they literally are you. You would do nothing different than them if you had if you were in the exact same substrate as them in the way that they grew up and the way they experience the world. And so the way that they're acting is actually completely perfect. And if you can start to just play with that idea of like, okay, I see, like you're not wrong for you.
Right. You're not wrong for you.
I don't need to accept that. I don't need to allow. And once you start to come in and, you start to change the way that you're educating my kids, which I don't have any kids, but if I did, I'd be very defensive at, with things like that. Or you're changing the way that I live, or you're changing my home, or you're changing things that I consider like rights for myself. That's where we'll have a problem. But you just having an opinion like that, I think is one of the most beautiful things about, I don't want to sound patriotic, but like being American is like, that actually is what makes it work. I think that's what makes it so beautiful. And better ideas survive and worse ideas, die off naturally. It's like free market.
Yep.
And if you can come into that place, it's like, cool. I genuinely you're not wrong. You know, it's like, okay, like for me, you're wrong as shit. but for you, I love this for you. This is great.
Yep. Yeah. And like, let them. I think Mel Robbins just released that book, Let Them. You know, it's just like, just let them. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not I don't have to live in that body, in that world.
But
if they want to
addicted.
impose their nonsense onto me, then I will have a problem. But like, if it's nonsensical to me, I will don't impose it upon me, but you can have whatever.
I think if you draw back the layers deeper of someone that sits online or, you know, just yells at their TV at whatever station is opposite of their bias, if you peel the layers back more, you probably get into a place of maybe it's like, oh, maybe you actually feel like a lack of direction or purpose in your life, and you being emboldened or excited or like going into an emotional state about this, it makes you feel alive. Actually, what you want, which is so precious and beautiful, is you just want to feel alive. Like, oh my God, this is so sweet. Like you're sitting there on your couch, you know, eating whatever the heck you're eating, you know, and getting all huffing and puffing, and you know, you're stuck on your inhale, and you're spilling crumbs all over the place. And it's like, and you could look at that person of like, oh, what a waste, you know, or like, oh, they're so stupid, you know, or like they're the problem. It's like, actually, they're just like you. They want to feel deeply. And probably the kind of styrofoam life that they're living, like Alan Watts has a bit that you can, something along the lines of like, it's like you can't get nutrients from the menu. You know, so like you can't eat like a picture of the food and actually get nutrients. And I think a lot of people in the world that we're living in, we're actually at like a deep soul level, nutrient deprived, and we're seeking sensation, we're seeking connection, we're seeking all those. And we want to be touched, and we want to love, and we want to connect, and we want to dance, and we want to sing, and we want to be challenged, and we feel like we're on purpose, and we want to fight. And when you strip all that from this kind of like denatured, neutered, modern technological life, I think what people really want is they just don't want to feel. Yeah. And so for them, if they put themselves into some thing where they're a troll on the internet, you can even look at the troll on the internet of like, oh, this is so sweet. Like you want to feel important. That's so sweet. That's so precious.
Yeah. See, you always reframe the things. That's when I met you when I was on your pod. I'm like, oh, he really reframed that for me. That's helpful. I'll take it. I love it. Well, this has been so enlightening as always. So fun. And I really adore you. Thank you for coming on my show. And I'm so glad that I get to call you my friend now. Tell everyone where to find you. You have an outstanding podcast yourself. And
thank you.
Like, where are all the places to send them?
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, they could listen to an episode with you on the Align podcast. And then if people want to go deeper into the world of breathing, we're launching, I don't know when this will go out, but we're launching the Align Breathing program. The program will be out in like a week, but you can get on what I would recommend if people are open to exploring their own breath. I created a thing called the Breathing Archetype Quiz, where you go through and you're asked a few subjective questions around the way you respond to stress and things of the like. And then also a couple tests. One is called a BOLT score. The other is another way of measuring your CO2 tolerance. It's very quick. And then from there, you get deemed a certain category of breathing archetype. There's 3 of them. And I find that to be a really cool thing, just to like get to know your breath and know where you're at and establish a baseline for that. That's at alignpodcast.com/quiz. So alignpodcast.com/quiz. And then the first week of the program is free. And in the first week, what you'll get is mechanics and exercises on how to breathe. That's the biggest thing that people are not taught. It's insane to me. Anytime I go to a yoga class or go to a gym or go to a breathwork thing or anything, there's almost no one ever talking about the mechanics or structure of how to breathe. Yeah. It's just do this breath. So it's like, we're gonna box breathe. Like, I'm sure your box breath person told you nothing about rib orientation or pelvic orientation or shoulder girdle or any of that stuff. Like, we just don't talk about it, which I think is crazy. And so the first week is all around mechanics and provides you like, how do you actually, what's the ideal way to breathe? And then what are exercises I can do to start to put myself into that? So that's alignpodcast.com/breathe. If you want to just start the first week trial, and you can check that part out. I think that'd probably be the most I don't know, probably the most interesting place to go is go deeper into the breath stuff. But the podcast is the Lyme podcast.
I will send them. We will get the links from you and we will make sure they're in the show notes and we'll send everybody there. I'm going to do it. That sounds awesome. I'm excited.
I think it's cool. It was fun making an archetype quiz. I mean, I had help on it. I can't do that alone, but it was actually a really cool thing. Like I genuinely enjoyed going through it. So
awesome. I'm going to check it out. Well, it was so great to have you on. Thank you for taking the time today. And this was very enlightening and enjoyable. So thanks for being on the Dr. Tyna Show.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Mike Fry. Theme song is by John the Guilt. You can watch the full video version of this podcast inside the Spotify app or on YouTube. As always, you can email the podcast at podcast@drtyna.com. That's DRTYNA. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find all of my offerings on my website at drtyna.com. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. See you next time, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.